On September 10th, 1931, the most powerful criminal organization in American history was born. 5 Italian-American crime families divided up New York City like pieces of a pie, establishing territories, hierarchies, and rules that would govern the underworld for the next 4 decades. But this wasn't some random gang war that spiraled out of control. This was a calculated business decision that transformed scattered street crews into the most sophisticated criminal empire America had ever seen. The story begins with blood, betrayal, and a man named Salvatore Maranzano who thought he could be king of all kings. But before we dive into how these families actually ran their operations and controlled everything from construction sites to gambling dens, we need to understand what came before, because the 5 families didn't just appear out of nowhere. In the late 1920s, New York's Italian-American gangs were tearing each other apart in what became known as the Castellammarese War. Picture this: rival crews shooting it out in the streets, bosses getting gunned down in broad daylight, and nobody knowing who was in charge of what. It was chaos, and chaos is bad for business. That's where our story really starts, because one young gangster named Charles Luciano saw an opportunity that nobody else did. While everyone else was fighting over scraps, Luciano was thinking bigger. He wasn't just planning to win the war. He was planning to end all future wars by creating a system so organized, so structured, that it would make the chaos impossible. But first, he had to deal with Maranzano, the man who briefly united the warring factions under his own rule. Maranzano had grand visions of being the capo di tutti capi, the boss of all bosses, ruling over every Italian-American gang in the country like some kind of criminal emperor. He reorganized the scattered crews into 5 distinct families, each with their own territory and hierarchy. The Maranzano family, the Profaci family, the Mangano family, the Luciano family, and the Gagliano family. Each family now operated with military precision. At the top sat the boss, the Don who made all the major decisions. Below him, the underboss handled day-to-day operations. Then came the lieutenants, the capos, who ran specific crews and territories. And at the bottom, the soldiers who carried out orders and collected money. It was brilliant, except for one fatal flaw. Maranzano still believed in the old ways, where one man ruled everything through fear and intimidation. Luciano saw things differently. He understood that 5 powerful families working together would be infinitely stronger than one dictator trying to control everything alone. So, in September 1931, just months after establishing the 5 families structure, Luciano had Maranzano assassinated. But instead of seizing power for himself, he did something revolutionary. He created the Commission, a governing body where all 5 family bosses would have equal say in major decisions affecting organized crime across the country. This wasn't just about New York anymore. The Commission included representatives from Buffalo and Chicago, creating a nationwide network of organized crime that operated more like a corporation than a street gang. They had rules, protocols, and most importantly, a system for resolving disputes without bloodshed. The families that emerged from this reorganization became household names that still echo through popular culture today. The Maranzano family became the Bonannos, the Profaci family became the Colombos, the Mangano family became the Gambinos, Luciano's own family eventually became the Genoveses, and the Galliano family became the Luccheses. Each family carved out their own territory within New York's 5 boroughs, but their influence extended far beyond geographical boundaries. They didn't just control neighborhoods, they controlled entire industries: construction, garbage collection, trucking, the docks, restaurants, nightclubs, and of course, all forms of illegal gambling and loan sharking. But how exactly did they maintain this control for decades? How did 5 families manage to infiltrate legitimate businesses while running massive criminal enterprises? The answer lies in something most people completely misunderstand about organized crime. These weren't thugs running around with baseball bats demanding protection money. The five families operated like Fortune 500 companies, complete with human resources departments, accounting systems, and strategic planning divisions. Take labor unions, for example. Instead of simply extorting union leaders, the families would place their own people in key positions within the unions themselves. A Gambino associate becomes a shop steward, a Genovese soldier gets elected to the union board, and suddenly they're not just collecting tribute, they're controlling who gets hired, who gets fired, and which companies get union contracts. This is where it gets really sophisticated. Let's say you want to build a skyscraper in Manhattan. You need concrete, steel, electrical work, plumbing, trucking to deliver materials, and waste removal to haul away debris. Each of these industries had unions, and those unions had pension funds worth millions of dollars. The families didn't just skim money off the top, they invested that money, loaned it out at high interest rates, and used their influence to steer contracts toward companies they either owned or had partnerships with. But the real genius was in how they avoided detection. See, when you control both sides of a transaction, there's no victim to complain to the police. The construction company pays inflated prices for concrete, but they pass those costs along to their customers. The customers might grumble about expensive construction, but they don't know they're actually funding organized crime. Everyone gets paid, everyone stays quiet, and the families collect their percentage at every level. The families also understood something crucial about human nature. Most people don't want to be criminals, but they do want to make money and avoid problems. So instead of forcing legitimate businessmen to become gangsters, they simply made it more profitable and safer to work with the families than against them. Your trucking company needs to deliver materials through certain neighborhoods. Pay the local family a modest fee, and your trucks never get hijacked, your drivers never get hassled, and your deliveries always arrive on time. Refuse to pay, and suddenly your trucks break down mysteriously, your drivers call in sick, and your customers start complaining about late deliveries. This system created what economists call a protection racket, but it was far more nuanced than simple extortion. The families were actually providing a service, maintaining order in neighborhoods where legitimate law enforcement was either corrupt or simply overwhelmed. And here's what made it virtually unstoppable for decades. Each family operated independently in their own territory, but they all followed the same basic rules established by the Commission. No family could move into another family's territory without permission. No family could kill a made member of another family without approval from the Commission. And most importantly, no family could engage in activities that would bring unwanted attention from federal law enforcement. This meant that even when the NYPD managed to arrest members of one family, the other four families continued operating normally. There was no single point of failure that could bring down the entire system. So there you have it. For 4 decades, the 5 families didn't just run New York's underworld. They became the underworld. They transformed organized crime from chaotic street violence into a sophisticated business empire that infiltrated every corner of legitimate society. From the concrete in your building's foundation to the garbage collection on your street, the families had their hands in everything, operating with a level of organization that would make modern corporations envious. But here's the thing that's really fascinating. Their downfall didn't come from rival gangs or street wars. It came from something much more mundane: legislation. The RICO Act of 1970 gave federal prosecutors the tools they needed to treat organized crime like what it actually was: an ongoing criminal enterprise. Suddenly, being the boss of a family wasn't just about individual crimes. It was about being responsible for everything that family did. Today, the 5 families still exist, but they're shadows of what they once were. The Bonannos, Colombos, Gambinos, Genoveses, and Luccheses are still active. But in a world of digital surveillance and federal informants, their golden age of controlling New York's underworld is long over. They proved that with enough organization, patience, and understanding of human nature, even criminals can build an empire. They just couldn't build one that would last forever.